welcome to the first episode of Success Equations. Very, very excited. This has been a long time in coming. And I hope everybody who's going to listen to this first episode enjoys it. And with that said, I want to introduce my very first guest to the show, Mr. Pete Newsome of Four Corner Resources. Pete, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you as my first guest. And, it's like I said, it's been a long time coming. And, we go back about probably 15 years now,
At least, yeah.
at least 15 years. So, you were a natural, pick for my guest, and looking forward to talking to today about, your definition of success, and what you think your perspective on what it takes to be successful today. So, introduce yourself, Pete. Tell me a little about what you do.
Well, I appreciate all of that, except that's a lot of pressure that I didn't necessarily sign up for. But I'll do my best regardless.
Thank you.
So yeah, like you said, I've owned a staffing company for 20 years now. It'll actually be 20 years in 2 weeks, which is crazy to think about. And we're based here in Orlando, Florida. We recruit nationally for any type of position you'd find in a corporate setting. That's probably the easiest way to explain it. So it's great to finally do this with you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. So the premise of Success Equations, so this is, in my humble opinion, and again, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this, is that there's a basic, call it a recipe, call it an equation, to be successful in something. And, everybody's got their own definition of success. The first thing that always comes to mind when you think of somebody who is successful is from a financial standpoint, right? Do they have the big house, the fancy cars? Do they go on the fancy trips? But, there are a lot of different buckets or ways that you can be successful. Obviously there's the financial, which you mentioned. You can be successful as a father, as a husband, with your faith. So there's all these different areas, your health, which is a big one and very tough for most people, it seems. All these different buckets you can be successful. But I'd love to hear, your kind of definition of how you would define success and what you think about that.
Yeah, I tend to think of it in two different ways. One is traditional success, right? Have a goal, make it specific, make it measurable, and then when you achieve that goal, you've succeeded, right? That's very cut and dry. I want to generate X revenue by X date, right? And then you can determine, was I successful in that effort or was I not? And to your point, that's applicable to all aspects of business and life. But I also think of success as, are you satisfied? Are you content, right? Am I successful in my relationships? Well, am I content with them? Well, then yeah, that's success. But even though that's hard to define, and to your point, it's extremely personal. No one else can really understand what that is for you as an individual, but it's almost a feeling that you have, right? And then, and that has degrees. Am I succeeding as a parent, for example? Well, I won't say I've succeeded as a parent, but so far so good. I don't know at what point I can call it ultimately good, but I think a lot of success is really just subjective in that regard.
Sure, that's awesome. I like, especially if there's different ways to look at and define success. Now, again, in my humble opinion, and hence the name Success Equations, I think there's enough out there where people who, obviously you got to want to be successful and set goals in certain areas or have, whatnot. But to me that it's not a secret. Is it difficult? Sure. Is it difficult to lose 20 pounds and, get down to, 10% body weight? Is it difficult to go to church every Sunday? Is it difficult to, make 6 figures a year? Sure, all that's difficult. But would you agree or disagree that there's enough information out there in the forms of books, podcasts, other high achievers, that if you just kind of see, the similarities or the commonalities of what they do on a daily basis and just emulate that, just copy that, without having to go recreate the wheel, it's going to really improve your chances. Obviously, there's got to be the discipline and the hard work aspects and the good habits. Would you agree there's enough out there if people would put that time in to really help themselves achieve those goals or be successful in whatever area?
Oh, for sure. There's almost too much out there. And that also creates undue stress almost, right? Of am I keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak? I mean, because it's not the average person who feels successful in their business, their job, their career overall, their family, their friends, whatever it might be, because we're constantly facing the bar being significantly higher, right? Like no average person is publishing a book to say, I'm doing okay. Right? Like no one's buying that book. You want to
Very
see,
true.
the billionaire, the person who started with nothing and achieved great things. I know you're a fan of David Goggins, right? He's not just an ultra marathoner. He's the ultra marathoner, right? Like everything's extreme. So, I think it almost, like I said, puts undue pressure and stress on people. But yes, all of that is out there. The roadmap for anything you want to achieve, weight loss, if you want to run a marathon, if you want to start a business, if you want to earn a certain amount of income, the roadmap is all there if you choose to follow it, for sure.
That's great. Yeah, you're a big Goggins fan, but you're right, especially with social media where, everybody's successful, everybody's a millionaire, everybody's got a Lamborghini but me, right? So it does put a lot of pressure on you because I guess you kind of lose the sense of what's real and what's not real. So again, in my eyes and from my perspective, you are very successful in many areas. I know I've known you for again almost 15 years now. Business, of course, you've been very successful. I know you're successful as a father. I know your kids. I know how great they are. I know your wife. She's how great she is, and what you guys do as a family. So you've crossed those off in many areas. So take me back to younger Pete. All right. So younger Pete, just getting started. Whether you want to go before Four Corners or you want to start at Four Corners, what were some of those early challenges? And I know you still face them. We've talked. We both still face a lot of ups and downs when it comes to, business and whatnot, and health and keeping healthy, especially as we get older. Take me back. Talk to me about some of those early challenges, getting started, all that.
So I appreciate the kind words, but I will also say that it's relative, right? So success to one person may, as you said earlier, may be completely different for another. And so when you look at my business, for example, well, in some regard, it's very successful. We're an extremely successful small business, but I don't necessarily want to be a small business, right? I want to be a successful, larger organization. So that is something that I think about a lot all the time in trying to determine how I feel about where we are, right? Because I could look back on the 20 years we've been in business and say, we've accomplished a lot. We have a lot of accolades. The outside world would look at us objectively and probably say, you are successful as a business. And to some degree, we certainly are, but not by where I measure. So it's still very much a work in progress. I'll say that. And it probably always will be because my aspirations really are pretty high there. But I do appreciate the kind words. For me, there was really two things I think of as a catalyst for change and improvement. One was meeting my wife. I was a senior in college, getting ready to graduate from Florida State with a 2-point-something GPA and a poli-sci degree, which qualified me to do absolutely nothing in the professional world. And then I met her and met her family. And her father was a doctor from an Ivy League school. Her brother was in med school. Another brother was in law school. And here's me with my, not so great degree and GPA coming out of school. And to me, that was just a wake up call that I have to be better than I've been, right? I have to do more. I have to take life more seriously because I'm not just doing it for myself anymore. It's for the person that, of course, I ultimately ended up marrying. So that was the first step for me of really just changing for the better. And then the second one was what led me to start Four Corner, my staffing company. I had my VP at the time. I worked for a Fortune 500 company. Life was good. I wasn't looking to leave necessarily. But this guy was reorged out of the business. He was about my age now, which is interesting to think about. And they took 2 levels of VP and made it into one, and he was one of the odd men out from that decision. And it was a real epiphany moment for me because his fate was determined by someone else. And I thought, this is a job that I'm aspiring to be into. I was terrified by it, quite frankly, that I'm going to be a mid-50s unemployed salesperson at some point. And that just kept me up at night in the most literal sense. And so it was at that point I realized starting a business, and I went out, I quit my job when Jen was pregnant with number 3, and she wasn't working, and the world would look at that and say, that's a risk, right? What are you thinking? You have a good job, you make decent money. But to me, the risk was not doing it because I was heading toward a future that I didn't have control over. And so those two things, when I look back on the over 30 years I've been out of school now, which is crazy to think about, those were really two pivotal moments for sure.
That's great. That's great. Especially, how I guess people, perceive how you're doing may and I mean, look, I'm telling you, you've done well for yourself. But I get the fact that you step in. It may not be how you actually feel. I was having a kind of a moment about a few days ago, a couple things, hitting the fan at work, and somebody I work with said, "Hey, just step back, look at the big picture. Things are probably going better than you think, right? But if your goal is to be up here and you're here, it's interesting when you look at it that way. So, all right, so you started Four Corners, and I mean, how many years ago was that?
It'll be 20, the first week in December, 20 years.
20 years. So time flies. Yes, yes, time flies. So I know, can we mention your other kind of project, which you've been working on the last couple of years?
So we actually folded that back into Four Corner.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. So still, it's Four Corners 100% right now.
It is 100%.
All right,
We
all right.
and that's relevant, right? I think to the discussion because the path to success is often marked with a lot of things that didn't go as intended. And yeah, I started a career advice brand. I think there's a huge need for it in the market, but unfortunately, the timing was poor in hindsight. We launched this right about the time ChatGPT was born,
Yeah.
and without going into boring detail, that was not the time to start a new publisher, a new website that Google assumed was AI, given all the content that was being generated through ChatGPT at that time. So it was something that was a distraction from my core business, from the thing that is making me successful today, that is my source of income. But I wanted to take a chance. I thought this could be something great. If things had worked out a little bit differently, it certainly could have. But I was cannibalizing my own company. And like I said, the thing that I know is already successful. So that's something I think about a lot. You have to take chances. I'm glad I took the chance, but it didn't work out as I hoped. That's for sure.
Hey, yeah, I know all about that. You got to take chances, and they're not all home runs or even base hits for that matter. There's a lot of, I don't know what the expression is, but two steps forward, three steps back a lot of times.
And we do that a
Stuff like
lot,
that.
right? That's my nature. We are constantly starting new things, but for every failure, there's things that are significantly more successful in the business. So I could bore you easily with talking about all of the things that we try. That was one of them, and fortunately, most work out. That one didn't, but we learned so much from it, and fortunately, we were able to recover much of the content that we created under that brand and just fold it back into the staffing
Good deal.
business. Yeah.
Good deal. Good deal. Now, one thing I'm always interested in, because I'm a big Hal Elrod miracle morning guy, right? That how you start your morning sets the tone for the rest of your day. So, I mean, for me, I've got my miracle morning where I'm up at 5 a.m. and I got to let the dog out, walk the dog. But then I make coffee. I go and I start to read for it's 20 pages I read. Then grab a shower, eat breakfast, watch a podcast or two or whatever I can get through podcast wise on YouTube. Then I'm off to the gym. And first and foremost, I make the bed. So that's my first victory of the day is making my bed. And if I don't do that, if there's a morning where, that bed feels nice and cozy or didn't sleep too well, and I don't get up and do that, and I don't work out and I go straight to work, I'm a completely different person. I just feel it head to toe, my mood, my energy for the rest of the day. What does your morning look like?
It's not that disciplined, I will tell you. but there are habits, and one of those habits is really been born from a daily newsletter that we produce. So we produce a daily podcast, video, as well as a newsletter on the state of the job market. What are the headlines that are happening in the job market? And so since we started doing that, that's my first thing that I do in the day. I have to consume as much as I can about what's going on, what's happened in the past 24 hours, so we can be really on the leading edge of communicating that with our pretty significant subscriber base to the email list. And so I consume content from about 30 different publications to start the day. So that's really what my routine consists of. It doesn't matter where I am. That's what I'm locked into doing. And I find it such a great way to always hit the ground running. Similar to what you said, I am equipped with knowledge and a great way to start the day that just forces me, quite frankly, to hit the ground running.
And a lot of that, would you say, with what you're doing, I'm doing, it's getting you in that right mindset, right? To go and tackle the day. Whatever, however you're doing it, you're getting up and I know you consume a lot of information, which is great. And but it's kind of getting you in that mindset, right?
It does. It absolutely does. And with that, and before I had that, I mean, I've done different things over the years when I was running marathons, and I was at the gym. I've been where you are now at 5 a.m. and that's equally, if not more, satisfying. No, make no mistake. I'm locked into this current routine for better or worse. But yeah, it does force me to just be 100% for the moment, because our motivation is to really be considered the source that people get this information from first. And the only way we're going to do that is be on the news wires before anyone else, pull down the content, comprehend it, regurgitate it out in a way that will be really easy for people to understand. So yeah, no question, it forces me to be on top of my game from the first minute.
Great stuff. All right. Only a couple more questions, I promise. Next question. What are some, I mean, whether it's one, two, some of your greatest lessons that you've learned over the years that you can share?
So back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, I would say, try things. Right? Don't wait for the perfect time. That doesn't exist, in my opinion. As I said, I started my company at what many would consider an awful time. Right? I remember telling my wife that I was going to do this and quit my job in a couple of months, and here she is, very pregnant. I was basically going to be quitting at the same time the baby was due. And her response to that was, just don't be stressed when the baby comes. That's all I ask. And I was like, well, I'm going to be stressed regardless. So I may as well be stressed with the weight on me and my fate in my own hands versus working for a really large company. So I'm someone who would always encourage anyone to take risks, take chances, and they're not always going to work out. But that's okay. If you walk away with experience and learning and knowledge you wouldn't have otherwise had, then it's well worth it, even if the outcome isn't what you wanted. But I also would say act on, if you are someone who manages people, if you are a business owner, and it's very easy to ignore people problems. And that's also a mistake I've unfortunately made over the years. And I would give the same advice there. Act. I've never regretted terminating anyone. I certainly have regrets on not acting on what is necessary and right to do. So those are a couple lessons. But then always, one of my big business beliefs, Pat, is to always operate in the light. That's something that I've said for years. I think it's served me extremely well. I think it served my company extremely well over the years, is to operate in a way where you never have to apologize. And that's something that it was just ingrained in me early on. And I've sometimes in the moment felt, boy, am I going to regret being the Boy Scout here? But when you look at your reputation, that's something you can't recover from over time if it ever goes in the wrong direction. And so if there's anyone young listening and wants to know how success happens, being consistent over time, reliable, honest, those are things that anyone can do, right? But not everyone does, unfortunately. But I think it's imperative.
Awesome. That's awesome. All right, last question. I think there's a part A and part B. So, part A of the question is, what does the future hold for Pete Newsome and Four Corners? And then part B is there any place that people can, follow you or, find out more information about Four Corners?
Yeah, what does the future hold? Well, a lot of that's going to be determined by AI's impact on the job market. That is such a prevalent thing in the job space right now. That could be an entirely different show we talk about because I tend to sound like Chicken Little when I talk about AI and what I expect in terms of job displacement in the not too distant future. So that is a huge focus for us right now on making sure that we're ahead of the curve, not only in adoption of AI tools, but also making sure that we're ahead of the curve just in that space and being aware of what's going on and trying to anticipate where the puck is going versus where it is right now. And so a lot of focus on AI going forward, technology tools, and the impact it's going to have on the market. And then for following us, I am a huge fan, as you could probably tell by now, of our daily newsletter. It's something you can read in 3 to 5 minutes. Subscribe on LinkedIn. It's called Cornering the Job Market. And we do, if you are someone who's interested at all in what the trends are, what's happening, what the latest data, statistics is happening in the job market, just follow that newsletter and you get all of that in just a couple minutes a day.
That's awesome. 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 Hey, Pete, this was amazing. It was much better than I anticipated for episode number one. So, again, I appreciate you being the guinea pig for this project. And we'll definitely be back on and we'll do AI. We also need to do one on like crypto, maybe. What do you think?
Well, I think Bitcoin dropped under 100K a couple hours ago. So what I think in the moment is probably not as pleasant as what I normally
All
do,
right,
but
we'll wait till it's running again, then we'll jump on.
that's fine.
All
That's
right.
fine.
Hey, again, man, hey, I appreciate it. Congrats to everything you've accomplished personally and professionally. And again, I appreciate you joining us today for episode number one of Success Equations.
Thanks for the opportunity, Pat. Always a pleasure.